I'm very honored to welcome Luís and introduce him. Besides being a friend and a very esteemed, besides being a friend, is also a very esteemed colleague who has just published a wonderful monography called Jesuit Astrology. He received recently and published also recently, so congratulations on that too, his work. Getting a PhD in the history of science. It deals with the history of astral sciences, but also history of art, and is here to disclose to us the secrets of the practice of technical astrology today. And to do so, I'm very happy to share with you the work of Michael Scot. So we will be exploring these topics through a section of the third distinction of the Liber introductorius of Michael Scot. So very briefly, so that we can dive into the text, Michael Scot can be regarded as a leading feature in Latin Western culture of the first third of the 13th century. Is well known as a Latin Arabic translator, as a philosopher, and as a physician and astrologer, really a polymath. His original, so to speak, work is the Liber introductorius, which was composed between the 1228 and the 1235, approximately. And it consists of action, the proemium to the three following books. And the three following books are the Liber Quattro Distinctionum, on which we are going to work today, the Liber Particularis, and the Liber Physiognomum. The Liber Quattro Distinctionum deals with general issues of astronomy, astrology, cosmology, and music. And the Liber Particularis is in topics very close to the Liber Quattro Distinctionum, and indeed it will be necessary probably to learn more about the relationship between these two works, as they are very close in contents. And the Liber Physiognomiae is the last book and concerns physiognomy. I have to say I feel very privileged to have in this room some of the most eminent scholars who worked on Michael Scot. Charles worked on many aspects of, Charles Burnett works on many aspects of Michael Scot's production, the sources he employed, the relationship that there are between Michael Scot and somebody who seemed to have probably edited the Liber Introductorius at some point, called Bartolomeo of Parma, and well, as well as Jean-Patrice Boudet, who worked a lot on several aspects that goes from astrological topics to magic and divination. David Just, who also produced a very important monography on the Alcendrana, which is a relevant source in the Liber Introductorius of Michael Scot. And Isabel Jorlands too also produced a number of publications on Michael Scot, and she's currently editing a text called Liber Nemrod, who was known and much used by Michael Scot, and so on. And so forth. So thank you very much for coming. I think you will have a lot of very useful insights and things to share, as the other members of this workshop today. And I hope we will all enjoy the journey. So, well, what are we going to do today? We're going to look at texts, and these texts have symbols, which to the most expert editors sometimes are still puzzles, because they can be written in very different ways. And Michael Scot himself provides in the Liber Quattro Distinctionum tables with different ways of writing the planets and the signs. I've included in this slide the tables which are found in a manuscript in Munich that dates from the 1320, 1340 approximately. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, we have the tables which are included in the manuscript, which is directly copied from the Munich manuscript on the left. These tables are found in two different spots of the same chapter in the first distinctio of the Liber Quattro Distinctionum. Interestingly, in another manuscript, which is preserved in Edinburgh, we found these two tables together. This manuscript is a manuscript of the 15th century, end of 14th, beginning of 15th century. And it includes these two tables together. This manuscript seems to be a practitioner's manuscript for a number of reasons, some of which we will see probably later during this workshop. And interestingly, who compiled this manuscript is taking bits and parts of the Liber Quattro Distinctionum, is not copying the entire work, is basically copying the entire third distinction with its elections and interrogations. But when it comes to other chapters of the Liber Quattro Distinctionum, is taking only what it seems to be of more practical use. So that we found just these tables and just a paragraph of this chapter, which is this one, and is reproduced in Latin on the left. I'm going to read the translation just to facilitate the comprehension. But because there were certain astrologers wishing to conceal the judgments of astrology so that not everything will be easily open to those ignorant of the art, they invented figures at their discretion, which they said were the characters of the signs and planets. And sometimes they prefigured them in place of names in figures and texts. And because there were different inventors, there are different figures. How qualities they have, as well as how they're owned by everyone and everywhere. And it's interesting that we will be facing the challenge of understanding what the symbols are in the text that we're going to deal today, having in mind this passage by Michael Scot. So the third distinctio of the Liber Quattro Distinctionum, as I said, includes elections and interrogations, and Luís is going to tell more about these two very relevant astrological applications. In the Liber Introductorius, only the long version of the book includes both elections and interrogations. Actually, elections and interrogations are all included in the long version. We don't find them in the short version, and they amount to approximately 100. They concern many different aspects of life. So we have warfare, politics, love, marriage and family, health and body care, property, honors, recognition and heritage, towards accusation and legal proceedings. And we're going to see one interrogation that belongs to this topic: future of the souls, fear, sadness, joy, suspicion, and everyday life, religion, and human activities. What's the plan from here after this very, very short introduction? And I encourage you to ask me any question if something isn't clear. I should leave the floor to Luís to give us a short introduction to astrological applications. Then we will have a collective reading of one election and we will comment on it. And a break of approximately 15 minutes, depending on where we are with our plan, and then a collective reading of an interrogation and a commentary. And for the interrogation, we also have the chance to look at the horoscope. that is included in it, and we will have the chance to compare two horoscopes, one included in the Munich manuscript and one included in the manuscript in Edinburgh. These two manuscripts indeed are the sole known witness to the section of elections and interrogations of Michael Scot, Liber, introductorius, besides the manuscript in Oxford, which is only a copy of Munich and of little interest for our purpose today. So I shall leave the floor to Luís now. And sorry. Oops. I'm trying to return to the Zoom. We seem to have a problem. I'm so sorry about this.
Don't worry. We're all used to Zoom shenanigans.
Yeah, no, it's something is off today with this.
Let me try to share mine. It might stop yours.
Yeah, please try.
Okay.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you all that are here. As Eleonora said, you know, we have quite a number of prominent figures in the history of astrology with us today. So I'll be just talking about some basic principles for those who are less educated in the complexities of astrology, medieval or otherwise. Eleonora and I selected some concepts that we needed to clarify for a better understanding of the text that we're going to read. And I would start, of course, by what we can call the four main branches of astrology. This division is not exactly the same throughout time, but in the medieval period, it's quite common to divide astrology in these four main applications. So you will have the revolutions of the year of the world, sometimes more currently called, and later in the early modern period, called mundane astrology, that takes care of meteorology, the crops, how the yield of crops, politics, and all the greater things of the world. And it's the most complex of all branches. We're not going to see any example here. I don't think Scott addresses this particular branch. It is quite complicated because it requires the computation of charts for eclipses, for conjunctions of certain planets, for ingresses of the sun in the various signs of the seasons, so Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, to assess the conditions of the world and the conditions of a given location. And in addition to these, usually the lunations that precede these events are also calculated. And there's a whole discussion where you should calculate the lunation or the chart itself for the event. But I'll leave that because we're not going to take care of that. So for a complete analysis of an entire year, you can have 16 charts computed or more, depending on the type of events that are occurring. So it's extremely complex, and not all authors use it. I think dating from this period, and I have plenty of people here who can correct me, John of Ascendant's book is one of the main sources from this period for the practice of this branch of astrology in Latin context, of course. There are many more in Arabic Then we have nativities or births, which are usually the most known branch of astrology, which deals with the judgment of charts for human births. It's also quite a complex methodology, which involves not only the interpretation of the chart itself, but also how that chart moves and progresses through time. And there's a whole array of technical expertise necessary to compute, what's going to happen and how those potentials of birth are going to develop, to do the predictions for the individual, which involve what's known as directions, solar revolutions for the native, and a number for Daria, and a number of, again, techniques that we're not going to see today. And then we have the two other branches, questions or interrogations, which we'll have an example today. And this entails the computation of an astrological figure for the moment a question is asked or received by the astrologer. And it is, of all branches, the one that sits in closer to divination, and later in the early modern period, which is currently my area of work, is going to be in Catholic context completely forbidden because of this divinatory aspect of it. And so what's happening here is that the person comes to the astrologer with the specific question, asks it, and then the astrologer is going to erect figure chart for that moment that question was understood by the astrologer. And then there will be a number of methodologies, depending on what was asked, to try to get an answer from the chart. And we'll perhaps talk about that specifically when we have an example, a very nice example of that. And then, of course, we have elections or choices, which is sort of a reverse of all of this. So instead of reading or trying to understand what the cosmos is saying through astrology for a given person, a moment, or a question, where the astrologer is going to try to compute the best possible configuration of the heavens to engage in a certain activity. And this can be things so simple as agricultural. It can have a more simple approach as favorable days, or the choice of lunations or moon aspects to do a certain thing, which we see usually in calendars, very simple things. Or it can have the complexity of having to erect a whole chart with several configurations that are going to be favorable to that action. And sometimes even more complex when those configurations have to engage and connect with the chart of the person who is asking. So there are several levels of the complexity, from the simple tables of favorable days to these more complex things, which are called general elections for the simpler, and complex elections for the ones that require other charts. And we'll see an example of something in the middle today. And it was quite a used chart. This is the branch that is going to have a strict connection. We have several experts of this here today with, for example, astrological magic. So, for example, for talismans and that sort of things, election is going to be used to create a talisman with particular qualities that are in sort of structure in the chart and that are going to be put forward into the talisman or the ritual or whatever you're crafting. So this is the branch, and some authors even put the making of talismans as a sort of sub branch or an extra branch related to elections. So these are our four main branches of astrology in a very simple and quick way. We have to do a quick and dirty introduction to astrology, otherwise we would be here forever. Then we have the qualities of the various elements in astrology. And I will start very quickly with the qualities of the planets. So here we are using, of course, the visible planets, as they were known, as the universe was known until the 18th century. So the planets are usually ordered according to their structure in the spheres. So Saturn being the most distant planet, and then moving from Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. The Moon being the closest and the fastest of them all. And this order is going to appear consistently throughout all astrological doctrine, being in practical terms or certain techniques, or it's going to appear as a sort of template for the symbolic and meaning and signification structure of the system itself. And it can be read from Saturn to the Moon or from Moon to Saturn. A good example of this is a very simple system called the Ages of Man, which starts by Moon representing the baby in the first 4 years of life, and then it progresses to the child that's able to communicate and start learning to read, adolescence with Venus, youth with the Sun, the adulthood with Mars, a maturity with Jupiter, and then old age with Saturn, for example. And there are several variations of this kind of timing through the planets. The planets have 3 main categories. There are more. So we have the luminaries, the lights, so the sun and the moon, which have a specific role and they're considered more powerful and more general in their effects. We have the so-called malefic planets, which are Saturn and Mars, because due to their extremely cold or hot and dry nature, they are sort of a destructive force. They represent qualities that are destructive in essence. Cold for Saturn and heat for Mars. And then we have the so-called benefic planets, the beneficial planets, Jupiter and Venus, which are symbolic. Their meaning has to do with growth, stability, and what is considered good things. Mercury stands out alone as a sort of a neutral party that can acquire the qualities of any of these. Then we have the signs. So I told you this was a bit quick, but then we have the signs, and the signs can be described and are usually considered in 3 main parameters. The first one is what we call the modalities. So a sign can be movable, fixed, or common. Sometimes common, also double-bodied. There are several variations for this. The movable is also sometimes called cardinal, although that's not usually in use at this period we're looking today. Fixed sometimes can also be solid or heavy. And these have to do with the association of the signs with the seasons. So being Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, the beginning of spring. Of course, this is all related to the Northern Hemisphere. For the Southern Hemisphere, that's a problem for much later in our historical timeline. But these will imply that movable means that the season moves in. Fixed means that it's the middle of the season, so the qualities of the season are well established. And common means that it's shifting between one and the other. It has both of both seasons. It's a transition element. That's going to repeat throughout the summer. So again, making a sequence of movable, fixed, and common. Then again for the autumn, and then again for the winter. Then elements are associated with the suns, the 4 elements. And with the elements come their qualities and of coldness, dryness, moist, etc., and also the temperament, the choleric, sanguine, melancholic, and phlegmatic temperaments. It begins always by R is being a fire sign, then earth, air, water, and the sequence will repeat 3 times and gives us one sign of each element, but with different modalities. So fire, for example, for fire, we have Aries, which is movable fire. We have fixed fire for Leo, and then common fire for Sagittarius. And this will repeat, creating 12 unique combinations of these mixtures, which give the 12 zodiacal signs. And you can see, if a sign is a fire, it's also hot and dry and choleric in temperament. So these are the main characteristics that will explain the not only in human terms behavior, but also what can be produced under that sign. So if you want something that is, let's say, quick, fast, and very straightforward, you choose Aries as the sign for your basis because it's fire, so it's straightforward, it's unstoppable, and it's movable. It has motion, it has speed. If you wanted something that to be more durable, then you would look at a fixed sign such as Taurus. So there's a whole logic, and we'll explore these in our examples. The third element in this categorization of the signs is going to be the ruling planets. And this is going to play a huge role in the understanding of astrology. So to each sign, there's an attribution of a ruling planet. And the logic goes something like this. So although this is not discussed by all authors, and it precedes Ptolemy, because he has a very natural Aristotelian perspective on things, he tries to associate this with the seasons. So he says that the luminaries are placed in the summer signs, Cancer and Leo, because it's the time of the year where there's more light and the days are at their maximum. Moon, being a feminine and moist planet, is a tribute to Cancer, which is of the element water, which is cold and moist, the same nature as the moon, while the sun, being hot and dry, is a tribute to Leo because, again, it coincides with the element fire. Also, the moon is changeable in nature. It moves fast and it changes very quickly. So it is placed in a movable sign, while the sun represents things that are enduring forever. The sun is always there. So it is placed in a fixed sign to mirror that quality. Then at the opposite, we have Saturn, which, being the most further planet, represents darkness. That which opposes life, that which terminates life. So if these two planets are a symbol of life and growth, because they're the lights, then we have Saturn as their opponent. So it's placed in the opposite signs. And once this order, this planetary symbolic geometry is established, then the following planets are attributed according to their distances to Saturn and the Sun. So in the order of the spheres, Saturn is the furthest, then comes Jupiter. So Jupiter is given to Sagittarius and Pisces, then Mars to Aries and Scorpio. We already have the Sun, so we jump to Venus for Taurus and Libra, and finally Mercury for Gemini and Virgo. And this sort of gives the same distance of the system in the sphere. So there's a sort of connection here between the order of the spheres and the natural structure, seasonal, yearly structure of the zodiac. At least in Ptolemy's view, and Ptolemy will be the main influence for the rationale of astrology throughout the Middle Ages. So this creates a very complex network. So a sign can be described, as I told, not only for its modality in its element, but also its ruling planet, which gives it a flavor, a certain coloration. So signs ruled by Saturn will mean things that are serious, grave, and melancholic. Signs that are associated with Mercury are more dynamic, Signs associated with Venus are going to relate to more pleasurable and aesthetic things, etc. Being this a human behavior or something else. We are going to also hear about signs of short ascension, sometimes also called oblique, crooked, or tortuous signs, which comprise the first, this half of the zodiac from Capricorn to Gemini. And this has to do with their time of ascension and how they ascend in the heavens. And then the other half, which would be the long ascension, right, straight, or upright, which ascend slower than the others. And this has also implication in choices of being fast or being slow, or in terms of straightforwardness of expression. This is an astronomical concept that is then interpreted through astrology very clearly. Then the signs will also have other qualities, which we could call secondary qualities, that have to do with, and there are many. I didn't put the entire list here. I think a complete list still needs to be done on these, although there are a few existing. But for example, this has to do with the image associated with the animal, usually with the zodiac. So Aries, Taurus, and Capricorn are called quadruped, sometimes bestial, because they represent beasts of burden. So the ox, the ram, and the goat. All signs that are represented by human figures are called human. So we have Gemini, Virgo, Aquarius, and half of Sagittarius, which being half horse, half human, is both half quadruped, half human. We have domestic signs, which are the animals that are domesticated, and opposed to the only feral sign, the only wild sign, which is Leo, which is the only wild animal in the bunch, although some also associate Sagittarius with this quality. And then we have what is called signs of fertility or of many children, which are, for example, the signs of water, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, while other signs are considered barren, Gemini, Leo, and Virgo. So in a judgment of a question or a chart regarding fertility and the number of children, these signs would either represent good fertility or very bad fertility. The water signs, so Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, because they represent another classification of creatures. They're not considered quadruped or bestial, but crawling. So there are things that crawl in the floor, things that have sudden movements, and I always say this, things that hide under rocks very quickly if they're threatened. And also they are called poisonous signs. So if you're concocting a medicine, for example, or something more weaponized something, then you would choose, you would elect something related to a poisonous sign so that it would be effective. So there are many more characteristics. I didn't put them all here. There are signs of loud voice, signs of mute signs. For example, the signs of water, Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio are called mute because the creatures in them do not emit sound. While, for example, Leo is a sign of strong voice because it roars, etc. There are many characteristics that are going to be included in many of these elections or descriptions of events in a nativity chart. So this is quite complex, and I'm just highlighting those that we'll need for today. Then we have another, the third largest element of the astrological computations, which are the 12 houses. The 12 houses nowadays and early in the early years of astrology are represented by a circle because they're reflecting the celestial frame. And these are divisions of the heavens in 12, but contrary to the signs, which are division exactly to do with the equinoxes and solstices and the seasons, as I mentioned, these are the visions of the heavens considering the horizon. So the horizon will be placed always here. So the first house, or also called this area here that starts the first house, is called the ascendant, the rising point. Truly, the name horoscope should be given only to the rising degree if we are being very correct in the use of word, not to the entire chart. So we have the ascendant, the descendant. So everything that's on the first house is about to rise. Everything that's in the seventh house is about to set. Then we have what is called the midheaven, which is this main axis here in between the 10th and the 9th, which is the culminating point of any celestial movement. So whatever reaches here, it's getting at its highest, and then in the opposite side, it's getting at its lowest. So it begins, and the order of which the houses are numbered have to do with the order of rising. So whatever is in the first is rising first, whatever in the second rises, follows that rise, etc. Until we got to the 12, which is that which is has already risen, so it needs to go around to rise again. And this structure will attribute significations and power to the planets that are positioned in there. And without the houses, we really do not have an astrological figure. We only have planetary positions. And this is quite an important thing. So whatever astrologer, all astrologers in their practice wanted, once we have horoscopic astrology, so an astrology that computes the rising sign, the ascendant, want to calculate this kind of structure with the houses so that they'll know what meaning they should attribute to the planet. What we're going to see in this period is not circular charts. They are rare for the Middle Ages. We're going to see this expressed in a square form, which is exactly the same concept, but these triangles will represent the houses. So these 4 triangles will represent the main angles, so the 1st, the 10th, the 7th, and the 4th. And then we'll have the 11th, the 12th, the 2nd, the 3rd, 5th, and 6th, and 8th and 9th. So it's a different scheme. And this is common until the 18th century, I suppose, when we're starting seeing more circular shaped charts. Not so sure about that, but I think that's when it becomes common. Otherwise, you're going to see some sort of variation of this. What are the meanings? So the first house relates to the native, so the person. And this can mean the characteristics and the personality and the traits of the individual who was born in a nativity, but it can also represent that which was asked about, the thing that was asked, or the person who asks. In an horary chart, which is something that we are going to see here, and I'm going to focus specifically on that, the first house represents the one who asks the question. What is its state of mind? And sometimes, what are his or her intentions? By opposition, the 7th represents opponents, marriage as well. So the partnerships, either by marriage or associates, or opponents, enemies, open enemies, known enemies. Sometimes in horary, it also represents the thief, if there's a theft, which is a very common question in our corpus of existing charts of questions. You know, who stole my silverware or my jar or my ring, something like that. Then we have the 10th, which is that culminating point. So it means vocation, office, public life, whatever your goal is, and also figures of authority, the king, or any kind of figure of authority, depending on context. And the 4th can mean the parents, the point of origin, usually the father specifically, but the parents and the family of origin in general, lands, terrains, and also in the context of elections and questions, also the end of the matter, how the thing ends, which doesn't really have an equivalent in a nativity. Then we have the other houses, meaning other aspects of life, substance, so money, gains, losses are represented by the second house. The third house represents siblings, brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, or also short journeys. So journeys you can do on foot very quickly. Then we have the fifth house of children and also pleasures and amusements. These are usually the main topics. Then we have the sixth house of sickness and servants, which is not exactly a happy aspect of life. Then we have the eighth house, which also represents a more demure aspect of death and loss, represented by the eighth house. The ninth house, knowledge, travel, long distance travel, and religion. Friends and allies to the 11th, and then prisons and also hidden enemies, betrayals, treasons are associated with 12th. And these are just a general overview of all these things. So this makes that the 6th, 8th, and 12th houses are considered negative places. So if some main planet of the chart happens to be there, then it might significate bad things. And there are houses to avoid when electing a moment. You don't want the main planets of the chart to be configured in these houses. What do I mean with main planets of the chart? The main points that we're going to see today, and this would take a whole lecture to to give all the subtleties of this, but the main points of the chart are always in the elections and questions are always the ascendant, so the rising sign and the planet that's either positioned in this first house or the planet that rules the house. What do I mean by that? If you have, for example, let's say Cancer in the first house, up opening, so the ascendant degree is in Cancer, then the moon, which is the planet that rules the sign of Cancer, will be the ruler of the ascendant, and therefore the ruler of the first house. And that planet is going to represent either the action in an election or the person that is asking the question in an interrogation. So that's quite important. So you want that planet to be placed well to be in a favorable position with other planets or otherwise. The other planet that is important in the matter of questions and elections is the moon, because the moon, being the fastest of all planets, is going to be the one that is moving along and making the next movement. So it's departing and sort of, let's say if it was a clock, it's the minute clock. So it's describing what comes immediately after, what is moving in the question or in the election. So you want this ruler of the ascendant and the moon to be placed as favorably as it can be, either by your own choice in an election, or you're expecting to see that for a favorable answer to a question. Another way the houses are used is to give strength to planet. So the houses are divided into categories as well. So you have the main ones that coincide with the axis, so the horizon and the meridian, the culmination point, are called angular, because these points are called the angular, sometimes also cardine, but the angular in Latin, angular, I think, is the most common word, and I have plenty, again, I have plenty of people to correct me on this one here. So angular, the next following are called succedent, and then the last of the three sequence is cadent. This relates to the angular, which means, for example, the first house, which is right on the ascending, the rising sign, is the angular house. The second is the succeedent, the one that succeeds, and then the 12 is the one that falls from the angle. Whatever is in the 12th has fallen from the first. It has risen above the ascendant, so it falls out of the other angle. So angular are the strongest houses. Then comes succeedent, and cadent are considered generally weak houses. So if you're choosing something, you want your favorable planets to be in angular houses, not in cadent. If you're asking something, you want your significators, the planets that signify your question and your goal, to be angular so that they can happen. While cadent might signify a negative answer or long time. So there's a yes-no thing here, sort of, but also time. Things that are angular move fast, things that are succedent move in the midterm, and things that are cadent are slow. And this combination will give us, with signs and the planets and the houses, it's going to give us the structure of the interpretation. And to finalize this short, brief, and fast introduction to the astrological materials, we also have something which is important that we're going to hear about is the aspects. The aspects are angular relationships that the planets acquire between themselves that are derived from the geometry of the zodiac itself. So when two planets are conjoined in the sign in few degrees from each other, 0 would be the maximum conjunction. There's a sort of what is called an orb, so a certain degree of freedom for this to be considered a conjunction, which varies from 5 degrees to 15 degrees, depending if you're considering in which planet are involved and what methodology you are using. We have the conjunction, which is the strongest of aspects, where the planets combine themselves physically, and it's called the bodily conjunction. And sometimes conjunction in Latin is used for an aspect, so in the same time, a combination, a conjugation of planets. And you have conjunction by body, which is conjunction proper, and then you have the other connections, which are conjunction by ray, because rays are supposedly being emitted to the planet. So you have the sextile at 60 degrees, which usually connects planets in signs of the same quality. So cold signs with cold signs or hot signs with hot signs, and it's considered mildly favorable. You have the square, the right angle, which is considered to be a difficult aspect, as they would call this would be imperfect friendship, and this would be imperfect enmity. The trine that combines usually planets which are in the same signs and the same element, so fire, fire, earth, earth. So that's the most stable combination and conjugation of planets. That's very favorable. It corresponds to 120 degrees of distance. And then you have the opposition, which is again considered a harsh combination because it's going to be a fight, A versus B, so it's going to represent strife or struggle of some sort. Then we see a void here and here, and it is considered these to be sort of blind spots in the zodiac. These are called the inconjunct points. So whenever a planet is one sign in distance or one sign in distance from the opposition, is considered to be inconjunct, So it's going to be on a sort of blind spot of the planets. The conjunction itself can be favorable or unfavorable depending on which two planets are mixing. If a malefic is mixed with a neutral planet or a light, that is usually considered bad. If a benefic planet is combined with a neutral planet, that is usually considered good. Again, I'm simplifying this quite a lot, so we have time to go through all of it. Then something that is going to be also important is that aspects that are projected towards the left of the planet are called left or sinister aspects, while planets that are being rays and aspects that are being projected to the right are called right or dexter. The conjunction and the opposition do not fit this classification because the conjunction is not a right nor left, and the opposition is straightforward, so neither right or left. So we'll have a sinister sextile square and trine and a right sextile square and trine. And in certain interpretations and certain methodology of astrology, these kinds of aspects have different power or different quality. I don't think we're going to see that today in any of the examples. It's very specific things, but it's considered that a sinister or a left sign is more fluid and dynamic, while the right or dexter sign is more harsh in its effects. This, in a very general terms, all of this depends on context. So this was my short quick and dirty introduction to the main features of astrology that we'll need for today's session. Eleonora, perhaps we should open for questions now if someone has them.
Absolutely. I saw there's a few questions in the chat, and if there's any other question, you're welcome. Just raise your hand or write that you want to ask a question.
Okay.
I think someone has a few that you can read in the chat.
Well, perhaps just this to this last slide about the aspects. I was wondering if I have an aspect between the moon and the sun. Where do I put the sun and where do I put the moon? Just with respect to, you know, sinister and dexter.
It depends. It depends. Usually, if you're considering movement, the fast planet is the one moving. So the fast planet is the one creating the aspect and dissolving the aspect. So it will establish the main characteristics of the planet. So if the moon is going to make let's say a square, so a new moon, a square to the sun exactly, it's applying. I haven't spoke about this. It's applying to the aspect. So it's creating the aspect, and then once it passes the exactness point, it's going to be separating. So it creates and so if you're focusing on the moon, then this left and right has to do with the moon, left and right to the moon. And this left and right has to do with, like, you were in the center and you're observing the moon and you're seeing if the moon is projecting physically to your right or to your left. If for some reason in other contexts you're focusing on the sun, and it's the sun that's your significator because, for example, is the ruler of the ascendant or something of the sort, then the sun can project a right or left aspect to the moon. Okay.
Okay, so if let's say if the moon is applying to the aspect of square to the sun, this would be a sinister.
Depends on which side. Let's say, taking this diagram, that here where we have the conjunction, you'd have the sun, right?
Oh, all right. So
and the moon was coming from new moon, and it would reach now here the square. So if you looked at the moon from the center, she would be projecting this square towards the sun, and it would be a dexter or right, because it's going to be on the right side of the moon. While here in the other in the one-ing square, where it's approaching the sun, it's projecting to the left of the moon, so it's a sinister aspect.
I think Charles has a question too.
Yes, Charles, please.
Yeah, no, just a terminological point. In my experience, well, just to say that was an enormously clear and helpful introduction to medieval astrology in all its aspects, or one might say traditional astrology. Just one terminological point. In my experience, cardines only relate to the places, the 1st to the 12th places. They're the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 12th, and the 10th rather, and not to the signs of the zodiac. But sometimes you describe Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn as cardines as well. Is that right? Has cardinal got two meanings?
Not cardinal. They're called cardinal signs, I think.
Oh, cardinals. Oh, that's
cardinal. Yeah, I think that's a later development. I haven't seen that word being applied in medieval texts as far as I'm aware. There might be, I don't know. But it's not something that they usually call it movable, or they have solstitial and equinoctial signs. But it's the word that appears later. I think that's a later development, much later development. It's cardinal, not cardine. But by that time, they don't use cardine to describe the angle, as far as I'm aware.
Charles, do you have any other question, or is just your raised hand from before? I think you're muted. Right.
We have the division of the signs into voiced, medium voiced, and mute. And this refers to articulate people who have articulate voice, i.e. men, and medium voice are animals which make a noise, but the noise is not articulate. And of course, mute are animals which do not make a noise at all. But is there another division into strong voiced, medium voiced, and unvoiced, in which the lion, which is medium voiced in one in one catalogue, is strong voiced?
There is. I've seen the Leo as strong voiced. Yes.
Okay.
I don't. Again, this is something. It's one of those things that it has to be done at some point in the history of astrology, which is to collect, all the variations of this throughout time and throughout authorship. But usually Leo in later catalogs appears as a strong voice because it roars and it's a wild animal, so it's something related to strength and power. So if you want to, let's say, if you want to do an election for a speech and you want to be heard and to be forceful, you would put Mercury or the ruler of the ascendant or the moon in a sign of strong voice.
Yeah.
It has that logic. But I don't know the whole differences of catalogs. I think that would be something to do.
Yeah.
We need a database. I'm always telling this, but we need a huge database with all of this information. Yes, Samuel.
So,
If I may, because just follow up, I had a question about these secondary qualities, whether they were binary, quadruped versus human, etc. But this gives me the answer. There's also three situations, so strong voice, medium voice, and mute. So are there several binaries and several with 3 options? Is there a kind of system in that, or are there even with 4 different?
Well, I've never looked at it in that way. Usually they come in 3s, because even with the animals, you have the bestial or quadruped, the feral, which is the only one, or if you count Sagittarius, 2, Leo and Sagittarius, and then you have the crawling, you know? So there's 3. Usually, I think it comes in 3 levels of 3. But that doesn't mean that there might not be some binary characteristics. For example, we have poisonous, but I don't think there's an opposing to this, you know. Opposing. You also have, for example, signs of beauty or of ugliness, which I couldn't find a proper table for it, so I didn't include them here. But usually the human signs are considered to confer beauty when they have to do with physical description. Okay.
As I said, there's 100 elections and interrogation in Michael Scot, and it was quite difficult to pick interesting cases because everything seemed very fun and exciting. I have decided to just pick 2 texts, and we are going to start with the interrogation because I guess Luís agrees with me. It's a very interesting case, both from the textual perspective and astrological perspectives. So I should invite you to open the file on Google that I sent you, that you can access on the link that I provided to you. And if everybody's ready, we can start with that. And I should columns were provide the excerpts of the manuscript and the transcription. So what we will do is that for the parts that are already transcribed, I will, for the parts that are already transcribed, I will provide a translation as you have the text in front of you, and Luís can comment upon it. And if there's anything which seems interesting, we can discuss the paleography aspects of it. And then I will leave the floor to volunteers to try and read the text and either try to translate, or we can do a collective translation, right? And help with the translations draft that I prepared. So, should I share the screen for the text? Would you prefer it? Okay.
It's not necessary, I think.
Okay, do you see my screen?
End out.
Okay. Okay, very good. So first of all, the beginning of this interrogation is typical in Michael Scot. There is a style that Charles has very much investigated, and which he speaks in an article called Partim dessous et partim d'alien on the relationship between Bartholomew of Parma and Michael Scot. We will, if you have the chance to look at the Munich manuscript more thoroughly, you will notice that this is what we find at every election, every interrogation, a very specific style that is that it comes all the time. So when you're asked, we start reading, well, I start translating since you have the manuscript and the text. When you're asked about what will happen regarding the accused or the captured by the municipality due to some offense, that someone will have committed or is said to have committed against another, look to his ascendant and his lord of the questioner, and the seventh house and its lord for the opposing party, namely the one who accused the other, on whom the question of reasons revolve. Look to the 10th house. Okay. Am I going correctly? Okay. Look at the 10th house and its lord for the judge, before whom the accusation was made, and for the knowledge of the course of his prosperity or fortune regarding the act itself. Look to the 4th house and its lord for the conclusion of the entire matter, both on the side of the questioner and the sought after matter. We are finding in this passage a lot of things that Luís told us about before, but Luís, would you like to repeat it for us?
Yeah, exactly. Here we have a very common formula that you will find when you're dealing with interrogations. In most cases, they will try to obtain answers by using the angular houses. So the ascendant is the person who asks. The 7 is the opposing party. So we have here, he who asks and the opponents. And then the figure of authority, the 10th, will be the judge. In this case, is a legal matter or something that's going to decide prison, etc. So the legal matter. So the judge, he who decides, and the decision, and what's going to happen. And then again, the 4th as the end of matters, how things finalize. And this is a formula that if you study a text on interrogations, you'll find time and time again coming in several variations. If you're selling goods, if you're doing a sickness and disease, where all of these angles are going to take prominent roles in the outcome and how you interpret and delineate and judge the outcome of the chart. So here it's a very classical example of this. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Luís. Samuel, do you have a question?
Yeah, just very quickly, probably something obvious. So in the text, there's talk about this dominus of the house. So if I interpret this correctly, does this mean so we look for the planet that is ruling that house, the way you've said? So I look for the where the cusp of the house cuts the zodiac. I look what sign of the zodiac it is, and then I know what the planet is ruling that house.
Exactly.
So how do these two parts? I mean, I don't know whether in the following text we will see an example, but then you have basically for each of the people who intervene, or the affairs that intervene, you have a doublet of the house and a planet.
Yeah,
you have a sign and a planet, basically.
Yeah, they have different descriptions. So you have two informations: the sign and the planet, and the ruling planet, which can be anywhere in the chart. And we're going to see that happening later on. So you have two different sets of information. The sign is going to give you general way in which things are characterized in that house. For example, the sign in the ascendant can give you in a question can give you a state of mind of that related to that issue, or even a physical description of the person who asks. But while the planet you see, the planets are the agents. So you're going to focus on the planets and not the signs, contrary to what we hear usually commonly, you know, in the world out there. The planets are the actors in the whole thing. So you want to know the ruler of the house, because it's the ruler of the house that's going to give you the decisive answer, not the sign. The sign is just telling you general qualities and who is the ruler, who is in charge of that topic.
Do I need to look at other planets that happen to be in that house? Does
You
this,
do.
yeah.
You do. Those are going to interfere. Yeah.
So as we move forward with the reading, I should ask you kindly to raise your voice, because we have a problem of volumes in the room, and it's nice if the people in the room can hear well what you say. So paleographically, just I wanted to point your attention to the abbreviation for dominum here. Often in this text, for the ascendant, just the first letter of the relevant terminology is given. And for the septimum, primum, secundum, for the houses, well, this is something that we are used in all kinds of texts, but it's interesting to see that, and this is a constant in these elections and interrogations in Michael Scot, Liber, introductorius, the ascendant, and the dominus is just abbreviated by their first letters. So I should invite you to help me out and read the second part. Is there anybody who won't give it a try? We can go together slowly and try to understand what the text says. I just need somebody to be volunteering. Would you like to? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I think, so it's a NAM, it's an abbreviation
Yes,
for NAM.
yes. 4 in the Lord of the Ascendant.
Yes.
The Lord of
So,
the Ascendant. Yes.
NAM Sidonius.
Is disposed in the good way.
So if the Dominus Ascendentis,
Yes.
fuerit bene, and then there is a dis for dispositus.
Or dispositus, yeah.
So this, well, we cannot really say these are practitioners' texts. These are texts made for education. So the Liber introductorius is for students, ignorance of the art. They have their first approach to the art, but still we can see from the manuscripts that the relevant terminologies is very much abbreviated in a way that we not necessarily find in the famous dictionary of Capelli, which is the one that we usually use for transcribing Latin text. So if the Lord of the Ascendant is well disposed, and then
in the ascendant or another laudable place, so we have to decide what laudable means.
yeah, which
Well,
is
yeah, well, as you're saying, if the Lord of the Ascendant is well disposed, well configured, well placed in the chart, and in a place, a laudable place, or in another place which is good, which is strong.
Yes, another good bono, yes.
Yeah.
Now to believe. Oh, and he gives examples, I see. Yeah.
okay. So sive locorum ut.
Conjunctio. Is it?
Yeah.
Conjunctio.
Yeah.
Bonar, where
we find
Boni, a conjunction with a good planet or another aspect, another good aspect to Bono.
Yes, so we see here abbreviation for conjunzione is with the sign for concom, the E and the O.
Yes.
Also here it's a very, very strict abbreviation. So what do we have so far? If the Lord of the Ascendant is well disposed in the ascendant or in some other good and praiseworthy place, either through conjunction with a benefic planet or in some other positive aspect.
Yes.
Right?
Another aspect, good planet, yes. Vel comeo sit fortuna. Yes, or if there's a benefic with it.
Yes, so this abbreviation gave me a hard time. Indeed, it was not immediate, and I think it helps to know a little bit of the context of the text, the astrological terminology. This is the thing. For a lot of abbreviations here, we are in uncharted territory. So the way we build up our own mental database of abbreviation is by reading this text. And this is a case. It seems that it's easy, but sometimes it's really not. So we have so some other aspect, or with it there is good fortune. Very good.
So
Aspidia
is it fortis for what?
It's fortuna.
Fortuna.
There's a little A above the fort.
Yes. I see, yes.
So, et, here is cut, but et aspitiat
there is an
ipsum laudabiliter in dextrum vel sinistrum.
Yeah, dextrum. Vel sinistrum. Yeah.
So here we have the feeling that the sentence is not accomplished, yet we find a capital letter here. And this is very typical in canons and instructions about any kind, that often capital letters marks valuable information, whether it is an instructions to perform something in a table or an instruction to give a judgment. We find these capital letters marking these attention points in the manuscript. So if all this happens, if all this above happens, dic evasionem de accusa facta medius quam credatur.
Oh.
So, say that the escape from the accusation will take place better than one would think.
Better than one would. Yes.
So would you like to continue? Sorry. Can you raise your voice? Do you hear there what Clement is saying? No? Yes?
Sed contrarium apparuit,
Yes.
Tunc judicabis.
Yes.
Et fortem persecutionem adversam partem.
Adversam partem.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if the opposite should appear, then judge the contrary, right? say that the accused will suffer strong persecution from the opposite side.
Yes, yes.
I apologize if the translation is redundant, but we have scholars from also other domains, and it's good to give a translation as we go. So, ETSI, now we know this abbreviation. This
Terminus escaventis.
Yes.
So, in the chart of the
Male-
ascendant.
Puerit male disposi.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Ut in the 12th house.
Yes.
Ut in duodecima, belli in ottava, belli in sexta.
Sexta, yes, yes. At ibi sit luna.
Bella.
Yes, said it in aliquo aspect.
So here I had an hard time. I'm going to tell you what I read. Then maybe you can help me out here. So what I read is bel sibi det vim.
Bel sibi det. Okay.
Sorry. We'll see that indeed, given the debt, I would expect the C. It's true. It's just the position of the eye, which I don't know if it's usual to abbreviate the C with the I on top.
Oh,
But
yes. Well, no, I think it's probably well said it. Oh, so no, it's just a minute. Yes. Well, it could be said it in respect to existence.
Okay, I propose that we see the other manuscript. Which is not necessarily easier. Here.
Yes.
At TV sit Luna, Vel, and here.
Male associatus dixibi.
Hippie sit Luna. No, have we got to that? Yeah. Oh, well, C. Oh, C. It looks like.
Diquerentis esse malum paratum ut periculum carceris. And the beginning, is it an out or out? Yes, it's out. Predictionem. Pecunier, perhaps.
So I think it's perditionem.
Vel fugam de patria.
Yes, we got that.
Cur de patria. Et in cursus Bamni. Banni.
Yeah.
Etc.
It's, I think it's a spelling for banishment. One of those spellings of Michael Scot. A bit vulgarized. So it remains the puzzle of
it is
here. And it's interesting that I don't know if there's such thing as the concept of decrement of aspect.
No.
I was sticking to the other manuscript. So here, CB that I thought it was something like and there the moon is found there.
Detrimental, perhaps.
Detrimenti. Okay, let's see.
Detrimental. Right, detrimental.
And then we would have a sibi detrimentum maybe rather than a C there.
Yes.
Yes. Mm.
Because it's true that we have the C at the beginning, so you don't necessarily need another C here to go with the that, if it is just the that indeed. But we have completely different thing here, where the two words that what we have as two words in the previous manuscripts seem to be put together in the Edinburgh manuscript. And indeed, and I wonder if the scribe had the same feeling and transcribed like this.
Could it be the moon in its detriment? It would make sense astrologically.
Well, ibicit luna, well, detrimentum sibi. Aliquo aspect existence, aliquo in Edinburgh, aliquo aspect to existence in Maloloco.
Maybe yes, for some aspects.
Yes, some aspect
It is
being
found in
in
some.
a bad place. Well, sit maleus back, Sociatus, yes, but that can't be the moon anymore if it's Sociatus. So, so we're still talking about the
But isn't it possible that the moon would be the planet who which gives strength, so vim, to another aspect or something like that?
Yeah.
So no, it's not that.
Yes.
See that vim. It might be possible.
This was my first interpretation, but I don't know. Tricky.
I think the logic here, independent of the exact translation, is is listing detrimental positions for the moon. So all of these would have to be the signs of weakness.
Yeah. So if we go with this reading, what followed is being in a bad place or badly associated. What is the outcome? So say, where is it? Dique. And so here. Here, you see some by reading the text, put a sign of reading here, marking that this will be the outcome. You see this little wave here? Because normally you would expect to find it in a capital letter, but this manuscript, especially this Munich manuscripts, doesn't have the same numbers of paragraph signs that we find in other manuscripts of the Liber introductorius, way less, in way less capital letters where you would expect them, and especially if compared to the other manuscripts of the Liber introductorius. So, what would you say? You will say that evil is reserved for him, such as the danger of prison, as Isabel was reading before, or the loss of money, or
cards.
members,
Yes.
or flight from the homeland, and the coming banishment, maybe. What do you think of this translation?
In cursus, you would expect dampney rather than bampney, but
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
yes, the arrival of something detrimental.
Okay. I will leave the floor to Luís to explain this in a second. I guess we go to the end of the
Yeah.
section that we
Yes.
see, etc.
Yes.
And then sed si dominus
Yes.
ascendentis,
Yes.
fuerit.
In undecima vel
Undecima vel in
undecima
benedispositus. Redact.
disposa
Dispositus
disposus
Yes.
dispositus
Yes.
vel in alio bono loco, cui luna reddat bonum testimonium vel, and again we have the same abbreviation, fortuna.
Ah, yeah, yes.
So what would we say to it? Tunc dicas ei quod secure vadat ad rationem et non timeat
Yes.
quia bene evadet
Yeah.
et melius quam credat. Vel crediderit causa est, quare Deus ei gratiam facit evasionis,
Yes. Yes.
que fortuna vacatur, unde non est omnino timendum.
Yes. That's great. Yes. Yes.
So, but if the Lord of the Ascendant is in the 11th or the 10th house, well placed, or in another favorable place, to which the moon confers a good witness or fortune, then tell him that he may go quietly to the trial and fear not, for he will escape well and better that he can believe or has believed. This is because God bestows on him the grace of salvation that is agreed upon by faith. And at the same time, there is no reason to fear at all.
Right.
So,
yes.
we have a little surprise by the end of the paragraph because we were not expecting to find God. But we do find God in many of the lections and interrogations of Michael Scot, and we find God everywhere in the Liber Introductorius, actually. Because if all the science can be traced back to astrology, or somehow there is somehow a reductio ad astrologiam, everything is also seen as part of theology, as a practical part of theology. And this can be seen also in the division of science that is attributed to Michael Scot by Vincent of Beauvais in the Speculum Doctrinale. So it's very consistent with the division of science from one side and all the rest of the Liber Introductorius, where this is a really common thing. Luís, or anybody in the room, if you want to comment on this legal text, this part of the text would be great.
Well, here
because we have
have
some things.
Here we have a very clear. He lays out very clearly the things I was mentioning earlier. So what he's saying is, if the Lord of the Ascendant is in a good place with a conjunction to a fortunate planet, or in aspect to a fortunate planet, being either dexter or sinister, here he doesn't distinguish, then everything is going to be well. And if not, then you'll have persecution. So there will be a problem. You will be pursued. And then he goes to the moon again. So again, the Lord of this and the moon. If the moon is badly disposed, and here he mentions specifically the 12th, the 8th, or the 6th, and with aspects, aspects and conditions to the unfortunate, then you have prison or some sort of injury, banishment, etc. But then he says the opposite. So if the Lord of the Ascendant is in the 11th or the 10th, which are very good houses, well disposed, in a good place, with the and the moon offers a testimony. Fortune, again, the moon is also well disposed, then he should not fear the outcome, because things will go well.
I think it's the moon or a benefic, isn't it, rather than the moon being benefic, unless you understand fortuna as fortunata, or if the
in each case, that would be a good good testimony.
And since we have Cui Luna read at, then the first sentence must be Sibi, that is the man, det vim, so the moon gives some strength to him.
But what was the word, the second word of the line before the last one? So it was Dominus ei grani
gratiam.
Ah, gratiam, yes.
Deus sei gratiam facit.
They always say,
Yes, sure. Facit evasionis, yes.
So there's any other observation, or we can move to the following section?
Let's go to, yes.
Okay.
Just one little thing, the abbreviation for the conjunction was really unusual for me. Is this but it's not actually the symbol of conjunction, it's an abbreviation for conjunctio. Is that correct?
It's the con abbreviation plus an E, so con, spiral is a con.
It is true that in the texts we have worked on together, Samuel, we don't find this abbreviation, and I think I found conjunction abbreviated in this way in astrological text more than in astronomical text, which is probably part of the practice. So it's just, but there's in this room people who have greater experience than me that can say whether they have found the same. Or...
I think the problem with astrological manuscripts is that there's a lot of variations in these abbreviations depending on who's writing, because there might not be a standard. So I think it will shift a lot. And then we will see either using the symbol or using some form of abbreviation.
Another observation, I just showing my ignorance. So the ascendens and dominus, they're abbreviated by a letter and a dot. This is kind of looks very modern to me. We abbreviate words by a letter and a dot, while the Capelli abbreviations usually are not a letter and a dot. So can you kind of help me or say something about this abbreviations by a dot in medieval manuscript?
Yeah, well, if you notice, there's a dot after the A, there's a dot before the A, and this is the case also for when we have numbers and other aspects. It's true that for dispositus we just have one at the end, but normally when, at least as a modern reader, when I see the dots, I understand that there's units of meaning to which I should pay attention. But for the dispositus, indeed, I don't see a dot just before. So this is actually an interesting thing I didn't notice before.
No, but as Luís says, I mean, in astrological writing, so many words are abbreviated just by the initial letter because people know what to expect.
Yes, and that means that the scribe did know astrology very well. If not, he would not have used such abbreviations after the first letter.
Yeah. And we see actually between the two manuscripts, there's also consistent variation in whether signs and planets are spelled out or just pointed out by symbols. So it also depends. And there's little hints here and there that the person compiling the Edinburgh manuscript was a practitioner, also by the fact that he's using a lot of these signs instead of spelling things out. I should go to the next sessions because then we can try to understand how to edit this horoscope, which is not easy. I have to say, it's not easy, but it's very interesting what is happening in the two manuscripts. So I'm going to read the text, the translation, so we have an hint of what is going on. Then we will return to some spots which are a bit obscure, and then we look at the horoscopes together. If you have any alternative reading about what I translate, you can just state so. Okay. So see also which of the lords, that is the ascendant and the seventh house, is best positioned in the terms of place and aspect, both right and left, dexter and sinister. In fact, according to which one is better positioned, you make a positive or a negative judgment. For example, suppose I was asked a question about the accused, whether he could escape with or without danger. The sign of Gemini was in the ascendant at 8 degrees, and so on, and is clearly shown in the present figure, from the exposition of which I must say that it is bad for the accused. So he's spoiling us how it ends. The reason is that the Lord of the Ascendant is in the 12th house and in the ponderous earthly sign. Venus is in the 8th, which is the Lord of Taurus with Saturn and Capricorn. The Sun in the 10th. The head of the dragon is in Aquarius. Mars is in the 6th. The Moon is in the 3rd, and so on. This indicates that the accused will be put in prison and will be judged to suffer a punishment of nefarious death, to which the Moon bears witness of truth. And now there's an interesting thing. This thing here. I changed my mind several times, and then I changed my mind again yesterday as I was talking to Luís. But let's think about this. I first thought is at, then I thought, oh, wait a second, this is very close also to the Taurus symbol. And this is Mars. And in the Edinburgh manuscript, we have the two in the same house. Maybe it's this, or maybe not. But let's see. We have something here, and then what follows is will suffer blade threads, sadness, and maximum pain. So having this in mind, I propose we look at the horoscopes in the two manuscripts, and we try to understand how we would edit this horoscope if we had to edit them, given the text and what we have in the two manuscripts. So first of all, as you can see, the two horoscopes are different. Even the colors for planets and signs are reversed. There is an interesting error here. The number 2 can be brought in Arabic numerals like this or like this in Roman, but really what it is, this is Gemini, but the person who was copying probably the manuscripts in Munich thought that it was a 2. Gemini sign.
Oh.
And
Mm.
the practitioner who made this
Eleonora,
manuscript.
let me say something here.
Yes.
In one of the tables that you shown earlier, I had noticed that he has the number 2 as an alternative sign of Gemini.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's two
Oh.
lines after all. It's two lines.
Yes.
For Gemini, yeah.
But that's true. No,
Yeah.
but this is okay. And in one of the other, you mean this one? Oh, this is in the Edinburgh manuscript, which is going with the more traditional one, and this is in the Munich manuscript. Okay, very good, well spotted.
And sign called Towers, is this also in the table? I'm quite puzzled. This looks like a 7. And is this
one?
typical for Taurus?
Mars
Yes.
in Taurus.
So Taurus is here and is here, and I think maybe it's even clearer here. See? So there is even a variation in the table between the two manuscripts. Huh? You can see it.
Taurus is a symbol that seems to variate a lot. Taurus and Scorpio. I've seen them in many variations, some of them very strange, like this one, which looks like a 7.
And just to add, here you have the numbers of the houses too, which we don't have in the Munich manuscript.
Yeah.
All around.
Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo.
So is it the number 8, which is just at the right side of the arrow?
Oh, the number 8 is the degree of the ascendant. So you have the Gemini sign on one side with the degree, and then he gives the opposite sign, so Sagittarius with the same degree, which they would be symmetrical. So that 8 is the only measurement he's giving us in the whole figure is the ascendant degree.
Yes.
I'm trying to squeeze this so we can read the text and do you see both the text and the horoscopes now? Yeah, I think so. Do you? Yeah. Okay, so let's check what is said. So 8 degrees Gemini. Okay, in the ascendant. Very good. As we progress.
Could you, in the same time, just
in the 12th house,
on
we have a ponderous earthly sign. Is it true? Sorry?
Eleonora, could you, in the same time as you read, just show on the chart what it is about?
Yeah. So this 12th house is this one.
We cannot see.
Do you see it?
No.
No.
You cannot see. Oh no. Oh, I don't know why.
We can see it when you're in the text, but not on the figure. Perhaps
the figure is selected.
So maybe here.
Unselected
Do you see
figure.
here?
Yeah, now we can. Yes. Now we can.
This is the 12th house. So maybe let me do this for the sake of making things clearer. Does it work? I have to make it a lot smaller so that we can see it. Very good. Now it's perfect. Okay. So 12th house. In both, we have a ponderous earthly sign, right? Because we do have Taurus in the 12th house.
Eleonora, so I think you need a comma between Terreo and Ponderoso, because it's a earthly sign, but it's also, you know, there are signs that are heavy, light, and I think you need a comma between the two. It's not, they don't go together.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, there is a few typos here and there. But yeah, thank you so much, David. So what about this? Venus in the 8th.
Venus in the 8th, yes.
This is straight. No, Venus is in the 7th house, but
Yeah.
it's 8
Yeah.
degrees.
Yes.
Well, the degrees are the ascendant. Don't confuse with that. But that's a strange fixture here because in the one on the left, Venus is clearly in the 7th and not on the 8th. Because we do not have the planetary degrees, I suspect that what would happen in the original one is that Venus was in Taurus right at the end of the 7th, but conjunct the cusp of the 8th, and they would interpret it as an 8th house planet. That's the 5-degree rule.
Yes.
And that might explain why we have these two different positions. Or he made a mistake. That's what is that option, you know? But it is strange that he does this kind of like, so, because it's clearly in Taurus and in Capricorn. Sorry, Venus is in Capricorn, and he's putting it in Sagittarius, next to Sagittarius. So that would mean that it would be right at the end of the house, conjunct the cusp of the 8th house. I assume as a possibility.
So then we will find the sun in the 10th. Let's see if it's true. It is, the 10th is this house, and this is the symbol of the sun. So we will say, yes, it's true in both horoscopes. And then, Cauda in Aquario. Want to see where it is in the text, so that we can see why I was puzzled. Yes, this one here. And we have this sign, which in the tables is under the label of the moon. So it is tricky, you see. Do you see the screen on the left of the PowerPoint, right? So you see this symbol is under the moon, and
he uses,
manuscripts.
He uses this very strange moon-like symbol for the head and the tail of the dragon, for Cauda.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And there's another inconsistency here. May I go at that, Eleonora?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, so he says that the Cauda, if that's correct, and then the Cauda is in Aquarius, and it is, in fact, you know, we do have a placement there, we would expect to see the head in the opposite sign, in Leo. But here, and in the opposite house, but in both manuscripts, it is in Cancer, in the 2nd house, which astronomically cannot be. So here definitely there was some kind of error. So that head over there should be in the 3rd house, so in the upright triangle in the left, and opposing the other one, because they're always opposed to each other.
Yeah.
So here there's an error of some sort. But again, he doesn't mention the position of the head in the text.
Yeah. And then we have Mars in sexta, Luna in tertia. So just for information to complete this, we have in both manuscripts Mars in sexta, but Luna in tertia in the Munich manuscript. Well, it is said sexta in the Escorial.
And none of the charts.
And none of the charts.
Exactly.
In the charts, in the 6th house of the Edinburgh.
Yes.
We do have the moon, but not in Munich.
Yeah.
And I think in Non, Mars is in the 6th.
Yeah, in none of Mars is in the 6th. Yeah. Again, if we ignore I was discussing this with Eleonora yesterday when we were preparing. If we ignore this inconsistency, according to what he is saying, he's giving a very bad judgment. So we are expecting the moon to be very badly placed. The third would not be such a bad place for the moon. But if it is in the sixth, and again, we don't know, either in conjunction or opposition to Mars, or even in square, because from the third to the sixth, there could be a square. So
yeah,
I think the idea here is that the moon is badly placed and afflicted by Mars, either by a conjunction, an opposition, as we show in the Edinburgh manuscript, where Mars is with Mercury on the other side, opposing the moon, or eventually it is in the third, which none of them depict, in a square. So the moon would be very badly placed with an affliction by a malefic planet, and so he will have these testimonies, which are, morte mala, and that's, very bad things are going to happen to this person. But still, the text is not at all clear, and what is the case exactly in both manuscripts.
Is it not talking about aspects here? Between Mars and the moon?
So you say qui lunare di testimoni veritatis. Can that be an A and abbreviation of aspect?
But so you mean here in sexta luna in tertia?
No. Right at the end, in the last line where you have
you mean
Mars,
here?
you have, would that be an A and mean aspected by Mars?
Qui luna redat testimonium veritatis. That's
Or, as you were suggesting also yesterday, Luís, we consider that the sign of Mars stands for the ablative of Mars, and it being and with Mars, it means this.
Yeah. Again, all options. I think here we are using. So this is now we usually use the text to explain what he's doing astrologically. Here we are using the astrological logic of the method to try to figure out exactly what the test was intended to say. So we're doing the reverse. So we have a lot of possibilities here.
I also wanted to ask you, Eleonora, whether you trust more the charts or more the text, or is there an instance where you use the place of Mars in the chart, for instance, to correct the text? I mean, a number, when it says in the sixth house, number 6 is just one symbol, while in the chart I see Mars here in the 11th house in the Munich manuscript, and where is it in the other?
it's in the 11th house. Yeah, in Edinburgh.
12th, in the 12th, in the.
Oh, sorry, in the 12th. Yes.
So there's an inconsistency between the figures, but also inconsistent with the text. So that's why I wondered whether Mars is perhaps in the sextile instead of in the sixth, but that doesn't work either.
Well, we had this problem when we were editing the text with diagrams. Sometimes you have to work a bit with the text, a little bit with the diagram, and it's like, what did you say was the German expression for it? It was something about the boot. One day you told me about this.
It was a kind of American English, bootstrapping. Bootstrapping.
Okay.
From the German myth of Münchhausen, who pulled himself out of a swamp by the bootstraps. Right.
So it's a bit like this, and well, this manuscript of Edinburgh hasn't been investigated much, and it's still unclear what's his position in the stemma, what's his value as a witness, and is for the moment, I will say, being it's a practitioner manuscript, there's also the risk that it is correcting what is finding in the exemplar that it is copying. So it's not easy to make decisions there, because when you edit technical text such as this, you have to take into account that practitioners copying the text may also edit the text silently in a way that we cannot really recognize. But not many of these cases have horoscopes, very few. There is an horoscopes with numerical values in the short version that actually Jean-Patrice studied, and showed that it wasn't a real chart. It was just a chart made to explain concepts of astrology, and it's found in the manuscript of Paris BNF, Nouvelle Acquisition 1401. But we don't have many horoscopes, so it doesn't happen often, but we still have just 2 manuscripts to understand how to edit this text, and it's very difficult. But this is exactly where you need people in the history, well, people working on philology and people working in the more technical aspects of astrology and astronomy to work together, and often without the prejudice of their own domain, and then to meet at some point and share and see where to go from there.
There's another thing here in this chart, which at a closer look, it doesn't show up as well, because we are not focusing on that particular planet, but the sun. If you look at the diagram, you see, you understand, you seem to understand that the sun is in Pisces. But if the sun is in Pisces, Mercury could not be in Taurus. It's not astronomically possible as well. So if the chart is correct, if this is a real chart, then that sun would be in Aries, still in the 10th house. And God knows where Jupiter would be, because it's not clear at all. So these little things, those are little bitty things that I just noticed now as I was looking at it. Wait a minute. That are a bit strange. And of course, another thing, so another point is, now we look at Venus. So if Venus is in Capricorn, as he says, and he states that clearly, then the sun would have to be in Pisces. Because it couldn't be in Aries, because Venus doesn't stretch that far away. So there is an inconsistency between the positions of Mercury and Venus as well. So when we see the other chart correcting and putting Venus even lower, it cannot be at all that Venus is completely off. So it might be a made-up chart. So it's just creating a scenario where he can exemplify an extreme case of something, but he forgot to check his astronomy to see. So it is an interesting question. Of course, we don't have an answer. It might not ever have, but it's still interesting to see these problems.
But Luís, sorry to intervene quickly. If you look at the chart, you as someone used to look at this, if you just look at the chart and don't check these astronomical details, does it look bad for the accused person?
Yeah. That's what he says in the beginning. He starts by saying that this is going to be bad. As spoilers, he gives Eleonora gives us a spoiler, and the fact that the Lord of the Ascendant, which is Mercury, it's Gemini, so it will be Mercury, the ruler, is in the 12th. In a case where you want to see if you're being condemned or not, it's already the worst case scenario, and then he makes it worse by making the moon also being in some sort of bad position to make it really, really bad. So that's why I said it's an extreme case. It's a chart where you find exactly the two significators very badly placed.
But is the moon in a bad position? The text says in the third, and you said the third is not that bad. On the charts, we have two cases. We have what is it?
The fifth or the sixth. The fifth or the sixth. Yeah. In the fifth, it would be okay. In the sixth, no. So where is the moon exactly?
Manuscript says in the sixth, the Edinburgh manuscript says Luna in sexta.
Yeah.
So this is why we're saying this.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions here. So is it a real chart? Is it not? We could try to recalculate. I haven't the time to do that, but we could try to recalculate the houses, because we could assume that this is an alphabetious form of division, standard system. So if we have 8 degrees of ascendant and sort of figure out a possible place for this chart, we could extrapolate some sort of cusps. And try to even figure this out a little bit more. But these inconsistencies are interesting.
Yeah.
There is a thing. Sorry, were you saying something, Charles?
Well, I just wonder, it's rather unusual to specify that this part of the chart is above the Earth and this part is below the Earth. It's as if speaking to somebody who's very, who doesn't know very much about astrology at all. I mean, he's explaining that this chart gives a picture of the places which are above and which are below. I mean, that's not usually necessary to specify, is it? But
but he does it here. Yeah, which is quite curious. I've never seen this in the chart.
Well, it's an introduction, so
it's for a lay person, as it were.
So very well observed, Charles. I didn't look at it, but in the two manuscripts, not the same labels. I mean, it means the same, but one says pars orbis superius, the other hemispherium superius. So,
and this is just a minor point, but I'm sure that in the second line from the bottom here, it is et Mars, and so Mars is also giving a testimony of truth. So this that he's going to be punished by a bad death is indicated not only by the moon but also by Mars. I mean, Taurus doesn't come into it at all.
Sorry, Jean-Baptiste.
It's just at Mars. It's just at Mars. Full stop after that, and patiator, or comma after that, patiator or probium.
Okay. So
in both cases, you see, whoever is copying the manuscript is trying to place Mars in a position of affliction of the moon.
Yes.
So because the moon is weirdly in the fifth, so he puts Mars opposing the moon. In the first one, and then he puts the moon in the sixth in the second manuscript, and Mars opposing it again next to Mercury. So
right. So there is some logic.
There is some logic here. Yeah. Whatever it is, that was the original intention.
We are already 6 minutes late, but I would like to ask you the patience of other 2-3 minutes talk, and you'll see that it's totally worth it, because it's a nice way to say goodbye with a nice little text from Michael Scot that you will find amusing. And it's an election test, so it gives us also the chance to see what's the vocabulary. But it's very quick. I'm just going to read it, and then if you want, I can share my transcription and everything with you. So this is the one. This is about the war. So it's before. Okay, it's this text here. The elections on. About the hour of the day, it is good to shave the beard or the head or to cut the hair.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I'm going to read it, and just bear with me because it's very amusing. When you're asked on which day and what time of the day it is good to shave the beard, cut the hair on the head, or shave the head, make sure that the ascendant is a sign of two bodies, preferably of a warm and dry complexion or a cold and dry one. Also, the moon should be in a similar sign, namely of two bodies, except that it should not be hairy. Therefore, Aries, Leo, Taurus, the last two parts of Sagittarius, and Capricorn are not suitable because these signs are hairy.
Okay.
Therefore, the favorable sign is Gemini, Cancer, Virgo, the first part of Sagittarius, Aquarius, and Pisces. However, be aware of the moon's aspect with Saturn and Mars, as their influence could easily put the one shaving at harmful risk. So I guess you're following either from transcription or manuscript. And we go here. Therefore, we read this. So for the sake of example, which should be around here. Someone wanted to do deliberately the opposite, disregarding this art and demanding to have cut his beard or head hair trimmed. The ascendant was Leo, the moon was in Aries, and so on. So was doing everything wrong. Once the barber was ready, he asked him, "Master, act wisely, that is, cut my hair wisely so as not to offend me and so that nothing harmful could result from our mistake." The barber understood the concept and replied, "Oh Lord, what are you saying? What are you thinking? With God's help, I will serve you wisely, and I do not see any path of danger. But if you see one or have doubts, let this shaving be postponed, and I will refrain from doing it, as it can be easily done another day." And he replied, "Master, do not postpone it now. On the contrary, I want to be completely shaved. Therefore, start when you wish, with my full consent." Then the barber began by combing his head and subsequently cutting the hair. After the trim was skillfully done, this lord said to the barber, "Master, cut the hairs in my nose." And as soon as the barber brought the scissors close to trim the nasal hairs, this lord had a tremendous sneeze and shook his head vigorously towards the ground, causing the points of the scissors to enter deep into his head, because of which he was greatly injured and badly cut between the nostrils. Consequently, on the third day after the injury, he died.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Indeed, the psalmists say, and we are here, psalmista.
Yes.
"The judgments of God are deep." And another said, "Today, if you shall hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation according to the day," and so on. Therefore, it is not appropriate to test God in his works. Another, while cutting the hair of an individual's head, made a mistake and cut a large part of the skin with the scissors. Another, while shaving someone's beard, inflicted wounds in 7 places. And the blame for the movements during the shaving belonged to the one being shaved. And this is the little election I wanted to share with you. Of course, I have many questions about this too, like why 7 wounds? What do you think this is for? And, you know, where this story is coming from, because we know that from Sadan, a pupil of Abu Masar, we have accounts like this where incredible incidents happen when somebody's going against the principles of astrology. And then there is a part which is more technical. I don't know if Luís wants to say something about this.
The curious thing here is the hairy signs. So you do not want to to shave or cut with when there's a hairy sign involved. And you can understand that the hairy sign, which is a very odd division, it's Aries, Leo, Taurus, so animals with hair, with fur. So you want to do it when there are things, and then Sagittarius and Capricorn. So you want to see the human signs, which are also signs of beauty. So, you cut the hair to look good as well. So it is very interesting the way he uses these characteristics for these specific elections. So it's quite a nice one.
And again, we found God that is mentioned, and it's the bound between astrology and God is very strong in the Liber Introductorius. Just by chance, I picked, me and Luís, we picked two items, textual items, and we find God involved, and even the psalm being quoted. So
I found it very interesting that he says that to go against astrology, and the favorable moment, it's to go against the work of God, which is it's a very interesting position to have.
Yeah. Quare non est conveniens quod Deus temptetur in operibus suis. Right?
Yeah. So to do the elections and the things at the wrong time is to go against the work of God, which is quite interesting concept.
Okay. So thank you for being patient and staying with us for more than 2 hours and a half. And so sorry for all the technical problems that we had. It was a great session, and I couldn't be happier to have all of you here in the physical room and virtual room. Thank you for finding the time. And thank you for all your insights. And if ever you want to share anything with us, if you allow me, I can make public the list of the participants with addresses so that we can circulate things, or otherwise you can just send me what you want to share and I can circulate it. Indeed, I had included an elections about foundations of city, and I was thinking about your article, Jean-Patrice, that I wanted to include in the folder. If you give me permission, I can share it, or I can share the bibliography so that you can read it again or for the first time.
No problem. Bravo.
Very good. So have an amazing winter Christmas break, everybody. And we'll see each other again on the 10th of January. We will have Samuel and Nick as guests, and we will talk about instruments and diagrams and the challenges of editing them, and editing them in a context which maybe has just one, maybe you have just one manuscript and is very corrupted, what you do. So thank you so much. Luís, would you like to say something else?
Well, just thank everyone for the patience to go through all of this. It was very nice to be here and share this astrological part with you, and wish everyone, a nice holiday season.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.